What does it take to win a cultural victory in Civ 6? I'm going to walk you through it, and I'm going to give you a bunch of tips on how you can do it yourself. Winning a cultural victory is about gaining large amounts of tourism. You need to get a dominant culture over each other's civilization. To become culturally dominant, you need to have more international tourists from a civ than they have domestic tourists. This is shown in the culture victory screen. The number of domestic tourists of a civ is based on its culture. This makes the amount of tourism you need a moving target. So as your opponents are gaining more culture, you need to gain more tourism to overcome that. The easiest way to think about it and what you need to do to win a cultural victory is create as much tourism as possible. Now, many buildings give tourism, including city walls after you get the conservation civic, museums, arenas, and Ferris wheels, among others. Here's some other things that create tourism: great works, artifacts and relics, tile improvements, including the beach resort and the ski resort, natural parks, any world wonder, and rock bands. Let's go over early game strategy first. Now, at the start of the game, there's very little you can do to directly contribute to a cultural victory because it takes several turns to unlock things that will actually give you tourism. Focus on scouting, meeting civs and city-states, and trading for gold any chance you get. Build monuments earlier rather than later in all your cities. This will start to give you some early culture and help you unlock some of the more important buildings, most of which are in the civics tree, not the tech tree. Plan out and put down a good holy site or two. You don't need to try and found a religion, but you are going to need large quantities of faith later on to buy rock bands. Pingala is an important governor. Get him early and get him a few promotions so you're getting the extra culture and great person points. Sometimes I do lead with Magnus still with that first promotion, so you get settlers without reducing the population of the city, but that would require a lot of open land around me that I can see I'm going to build a lot of settlers. If I don't have that, I'll skip Magnus and go straight for Ping. Plan your path to opening theaters, which is your main district for a cultural win. Prioritize getting political philosophy in the civics tree, which opens up your 4 policy card governments. After that's open, beeline to drama and poetry to unlock theaters. Keep a small defensive military and try to avoid conflict if possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable, so if you get attacked, play defensively and wipe out the attacker's army. Counterattack if there's a non-capital city that's easy to grab. After you've unlocked theaters, this will move you into phase 2. Once those are unlocked, you want to focus building theaters and their associated buildings in every one of your cities. They should all get a theater. Build them next to entertainment centers and wonders for additional adjacency bonuses. The second building in each theater is a choice between an art and an archaeology museum. I start off with a few art museums because you will get artists before you get archaeologists. So for the first 3 theaters, just build art museums. Ultimately, you'll want to end up with about a 50-50 balance between art and archaeology museums across all your cities. Build a harbor or commercial district in most, if not all, of your cities. The more gold you can create, the better, as it will come in handy to buy great works from other civilizations and will help you grow your empire faster by being able to buy buildings and civilians. There are also a couple of late game great merchants that boost your tourism that you're going to want to target. On the civic side, focus on unlocking exploration to get your 6 policy card government. Additionally, you'll want to prioritize theology for temples, humanism for museums, natural history for archaeology, and conservation for naturalists. Diplomatic service can also play into your strategy as it unlocks spies, which can be used to steal great works from other civilizations. From there, focus on getting your next government, democracy, unlocked with the suffrage civic. Depending on where your science is at, you might unlock radio during this phase, which allows you to build the seaside resort as a tile improvement. If you have that unlocked, build those where you can, although note the requirements for them are pretty high, so you'll only likely be able to build a couple of these. During this phase, I also establish what I call a tree hugger city, and that is going to be a city that minimizes districts and industrial buildings, and it maximizes hex appeal. So I put forests wherever I can. If I can find a spot for it, I'll put a preserve in there, and I will build as many nature parks as I can in and around that area. As you start collecting great works, you want to theme your museums. Theming doubles the culture and tourism from a museum and when stacked with other modifiers adds a meaningful amount of extra yields. To theme an archaeology museum, you need to put in 3 artifacts that are from the same era and different civilizations. So most likely you're going to need to get multiple archaeology museums up, and you're going to have to send out a few archaeologists until you can get enough artifacts to make the right combination. To theme an art museum, you want to have 3 pieces of artwork that are the same type of art and from different artists. So this requires you to get at least 3 great artists before you can theme a museum. And that goes back to why we build 3 art museums first, because that's going to give you the best chance to theme a museum faster. Once you are getting your museums up, start trading with other civs for their great works. You can buy them outright, where you don't trade the work back. You might need to offer a great work to get one, which is okay if you're trying to get one for a specific theme and you need a very specific artifact type or era in order to complete that theme. And note that the Great Works management screen is terrible. It's one of the worst parts of the game. It's annoying. Do your best with it. I'm sure there's a mod or 2 out there. I don't use mods for Civ 6, so I'm sure there's one out there to make it a little bit easier, but yeah, it sucks. So we're now entering phase 3, and this gets us into our final push. On the civic side, we need a number of the remaining civics for the policy cards, units, and tile improvements that they unlock. Professional sports unlocks the ski resort. I target this first because as soon as it's unlocked, you can start spamming ski resorts on all your mountains. Note that ski resorts cannot be built next to each other, so there must be a 1 hex gap in between them. Doesn't have to be a mountain, but does need to have a gap. Cold War unlocks rock bands. Once rock bands are unlocked, it's time to start spending that faith you've been hoarding all game. Start buying rock bands and send them into other civs. Rock bands work by entering a foreign civ's territory and performing a concert in one of their districts or wonders. By performing a concert, you're awarded a lump sum of tourism based on some randomness and modified by the promotions that a rock band has. The promotion of rock bands is very important. Rock bands have a high chance of disbanding after each concert, and the promotions can significantly reduce that chance. If your rock band has a promotion that gives them higher levels in certain types of districts or wonders, only perform concerts in that district or in wonders. The rock band can continue to level up, gaining additional promotions and abilities. Note that there's a policy card that prevents rock bands from entering your empire. That might get put into play, and if it does, you will not be able to send rock bands into that civ as long as they have that policy card active. While you're managing your rock band army, continue to work on unlocking other tourism beneficial civics and tech. Environmentalism unlocks a 25% buff to tourism. Social media unlocks the online communities policy card, which buffs tourism from trade. On the tech side, if you haven't already done it, you can unlock radio. That should be a priority that will allow you to build broadcast towers in your theaters, as well as seaside resorts. The other priority here is computers, which gives a 25% buff to all tourism across your empire. Finally, building a spaceport district and completing the second mission, the moon landing, will give you a significant culture boost. This is worth doing only when you have nothing else to focus on that isn't tourism specific. Distributed sovereignty unlocks the last tier government digital democracy, which gives you extra amenities and culture for each district. There are penalties to tourism for having different government types, so you might hold off on switching governments if other civs are far behind you and have high culture. You might also consider switching governments as an offensive or defensive strategy if another civ has high culture or high tourism. If you haven't won the game by this point, you might need to go to war. Look at the top civs that have the most culture and start planning military action. Plan to attack and take cities with wonders and theaters, as these will boost your own tourism while lowering your opponent's culture. Remember to load and theme any museums that you take. The key government types that I like to use for a cultural victory include Classical Republic as the 4 slot, Merchant Republic as the 6 slot, Democracy for the 8, and Digital Democracy for the final government type. Now again, having a different type of government than another civ does give you a tourism penalty with that civilization. So you might want to match the most culturally powerful civs that are out there as a part of your strategy in winning. There are a few key policy cards for ensuring a cultural victory. Aesthetics from medieval fairs gives you 100% theater adjacency. This is later replaced by sports media, which gives you that adjacency bonus as well as +1 amenities for stadiums. Another one that is cultural related is the Grand Opera from Opera and Ballet. I personally don't use this card often because the requirements are pretty steep and I don't always have very many cities that meet those requirements. 15 population or 4 adjacency bonus. Either one of those things give you 50% additional culture from the theater square. The really important ones, heritage tourism from cultural heritage gives 100% tourism from art and artifacts. Satellite broadcasts from Space Race gives you 200% tourism from music. And online communities from social media gives 50% tourism bonus to trade routes. Now for cultural victory, any wonder is a good wonder, but there are a few that go above and beyond that. Broadway is a great one if you can get it. That gives you +20% culture in the city, and it's your first opportunity to slot music great people. It is pretty competitive. The AI will try and build that. They'll build it fairly early on, especially at the higher difficulty levels. So that one might be a challenge for you to get. Next on the list, Cristo Redentor. This buffs religious tourism and seaside resorts. So it's less effective if you've not founded your own religion and you're not generating a lot of religious tourism, but it does give you a nice culture hit and can be useful if you're playing a strong religious game in addition to the cultural game. The last one, Sydney Opera House. This gives 8 culture, 5 musician points. This is also a fairly early opportunity to slot music. And this one has very low competition. Very rarely do I see the AI build this. And so for you, this could be a great choice in getting a good wonder that gives you lots of cultural benefits. Key city states for a cultural victory include any of the cultural focused civs. Those are going to give you buffs to your buildings in your theater districts, and you'll get more culture from those buildings. There are a few civs that are not cultural civs that are also really positive to get. One is Anshan, which is a science-based city state that gives you +2 science from writing artifacts, and it gives you +1 science from relics and other artifacts. Also, Bologna provides +1 great person points, which will give you points for your theater districts and the writers, the artists, and the musicians. Last would be Brussels. Brussels gives you a 15% bonus to wonder construction. So any of those 3 non-cultural city-states, if you see those in the game, those would be great to try and add. Other than that, the cultural city-states are all good and provide good bonuses to a cultural and tourism game. There are a couple of key great people that you want to try and snag that are not writers, artists, or musicians. Both of these are great merchants. There's one in the modern era. There's one in the atomic era. Sarah Breedlove is a great merchant from the modern era that gives 25% tourism to trade routes. And Melita Bentz is the atomic era great merchant that gives that same bonus, 25% tourism for trade routes. Try and snag either one of those to make your trade routes better. Here are a few other key mechanics you want to understand in order to get the cultural win. Donatello and Michelangelo both produce sculptures that cannot be themed until very late in the game because you need sculptures from different artists, and that third artist that produces sculptures comes really late. So when I see Donatello or Michelangelo pop up, I actually skip them at the beginning, let other civs waste their points on those artists. You can always buy or steal the sculptures later in the game once you've got enough artists making sculptures that you can actually theme them. Religious art is the first themable art, and religious art has nothing to do with a religion in the game at all. So you don't need to be getting a religion in order to benefit from the religious art. Open borders gives a 25% increase to tourism, so try and stay friendly with everybody, especially the more powerful cultural civilizations. That will allow you to maintain open borders with them, which will give you a buff to tourism. Flight is a very important tech to unlock, as it unlocks tourism from the tile improvements that generate culture. And as far as best civilizations to play, when I filmed most of this video, I actually picked Spain just because I like to make things hard on myself, I guess. Spain is a terrible choice for a cultural victory. They have nothing that really helps you. But 3 civs that do. Eleanor of France, she gets increased wonder building and double tourism from all wonders. France also gives you the Chateau Hex improvement, which adds additional culture, which then turns into tourism once you open flight. Eleanor has a really unique flipping mechanic for cities as well, where great works within 9 tiles of a city put pressure on that city and they lose loyalty faster. And so you can actually flip cities without combat, and there's no free city state in between. It immediately flips when loyalty goes to 0 if Eleanor is putting pressure on that city, and the city is going to flip to her. Movemba of Congo is another good choice. He gets bonuses from relics, artifacts, and sculptures, and you'll have many of those in order to get your civics win. He also gets more points towards great artists and musicians, which is going to help you out as well. The third is a 2-for-1. The civ is Greece, and you can pick either leader for Greece, either Gorgo or Pericles as the leader. Gorgo gets culture from defeating military units, including barbarians. So if you're a little bit more bloodthirsty, she'll be a good pick for you. Pericles gets 5% culture from each city-state where he's the suzerain. So either one of those, pacifists are going to align more with Pericles. The military folks are going to align more with Gorgo. In both cases, you're also going to get a unique theater district that costs less production to build. This does it for getting a culture win. Follow this and you will be able to do it. Again, I did a playthrough using Spain and all of the strategy outlined here and was able to pull out the cultural victory. It will be even that much easier if you pick a culturally aligned civilization that gives you benefits to culture and helps you with your win. If you have any questions about this or getting a cultural victory, drop them down below.